Okay, today I have a declutter video for you. I have been wanting to declutter my foundations for a little while. I feel like my foundation collection has gotten a little bit bigger than I want it to, and my preferences have changed a little bit. So there are formulas in here that I'm not reaching for regularly. And when that happens, I know it's time to declutter. I usually do my declutter series in the spring. I feel like it just kind of fits with like spring cleaning and that type of mood, but I wasn't really ready to do it this past spring. I felt like overall my collection was pretty well curated, but at this point, I do feel like some of my drawers are getting a little bit too full, and I always like to keep things in check. So once a year, it's nice to go through like every single category and remove products that I'm no longer using, formulas I'm not really enjoying. I pass products along to friends and family. I get rid of old and expired products, which doesn't happen too often, but makeup does expire, so it's important to check on those formulas. I do donate new and unused products to a women's shelter and a teen center in my area, but they don't take used products. If something is very gently used, I might donate it to something like Project Beauty Share, but in general, I just give them to like my friends and family who are interested in trying them. If they're over, they can see what different formulas they like. So anyway, let's go through. I'll talk about every single product in this video, whether or not I love it, if I use it all the time, or if it's something I no longer enjoy. And I'll just try to curate this a little bit better. So when I open up my makeup collection, it's just products I really love and I enjoy using all the time. Okay, let's start with this one right here. This is from e.l.f. This is their Flawless Finish Foundation. So I really liked this formula for years. I will say I haven't reached for it very much over the past year. It is a little bit of like a lighter to slightly medium coverage foundation. And there are other formulas that I've found that I prefer to this one, but I'm actually going to declutter this one because e.l.f. recently came out with their new foundation. This is called the Soft Glam Satin Foundation, and I absolutely love this. I think it is such a gorgeous formula. It again is kind of like a medium coverage finish foundation, so it looks great on the skin for everyday wear. You can build it up a little bit as well, and I think the finish is absolutely perfect because it's not too dewy, it's not too matte. It really is like that perfect in between. Some people have said that these have very similar ingredients, and when I just glanced online, they did look close. I think there were maybe just a couple of changes between the two formulas. Even though the ingredients are pretty similar, I feel like the textures and the formulas are a little bit different, and I really do prefer the Soft Glam one. I will say the Soft Glam one does not have the same scent as the original Flawless Finish foundation, which is nice because this one does have a pretty strong scent. So anyway, if it came down to it, I would reach for the Soft Glam almost every single time over the Flawless Finish. And I do think this is getting a little bit old because it has started to separate in the bottle even once I mix it back together. I think the Essence Pretty Natural Foundation is also a good option if you want something a little bit lighter, slightly more natural on the skin. I would say this leans in like the tinted moisturizer direction. Like you don't get a lot of coverage like you do with a traditional foundation. It's very light, very, very comfortable. Between the two, I probably do prefer the e.l.f. a little bit more. I don't know that I need both of these shades. This always happens. I always end up with two shades, but I have started to work color correctors and like a little bit of a lighter pigment into my routine. So if a foundation shade is a little bit off, I usually can adjust it. And because of that, I don't find that I always need two shades. So let me swatch these. So on the left is 50 Neutral Champagne, and then on the right is 70 Warm Cashew. I do think the Neutral Champagne is the type of tone that I tend to reach for a little bit more these days. Honestly, mixed together, these probably are like my perfect shade. I know I just said that I can kind of adjust them, but yeah, I think I'm actually going to keep both of these because I think mixed together, a little bit of warmth with that neutral shade really does end up being like a perfect shade match for me. So I'm going to hang on to both of these too. The e.l.f. foundation, neither one of those is a great shade match for me. This one is 15 Fair Warm, and this one is 21 Light Neutral. I did order the shade in between. I've said that in a couple of recent videos. I think that actually might be a little bit more ideal for me. Mixed together, these are okay, but I still have to add like a little bit of a blue color corrector. So once I get the new shade, I might end up decluttering either one or maybe both of these and just passing them along. But for now, I am going to keep them because I can make them work, and I do like the formula so much. Another one of my favorite lighter coverage, more natural products is from Typology. This is their Tinted Serum. This is one of the most gorgeous complexion products I've tried. It is so lightweight, incredibly comfortable. Like this is the true definition of a your skin but better product. So typically I wear the shade Fair. I did keep light on hand because I thought if I got a little bit of a tan this summer, I might need to mix them together, but Fair still works for me. Okay, so on the left is Fair and then on the right is Light. I am going to declutter Light. Fair is probably like a little bit light when I swatch it like that, but it is more of an adaptable product because it has pretty light light coverage. That's a heavier swatch, so it looks like it has a little bit more coverage than it does. But as you blend it into the skin, it really just melts into the skin in the most natural way. So I really feel like I could still get away with the shade Fair even in the summertime. And again, if I want it to be a little bit darker, I can always mix in a bronzing drop, but Fair really is my perfect shade. Okay, I think I actually need to repurchase this product. This is from Revolution Beauty. It is a brand that's sold at Walmart, and they have really affordable products. I'm pretty sure everything in the line is under $6, and this is such a gorgeous formula. It is their Super Serum Hyaluronic Acid Foundation. So I have the shade F6, which is a little bit dark for me, but I think this actually expired. Sometimes it's hard to tell with these like thinner, more runny formulas because they do tend to separate in the bottle. And for me, I can always tell if like I shake it back together and then it almost immediately separates. And I feel like that is the case with this product, but it is so gorgeous. I definitely want to repurchase it. I think I might go like a shade lighter. This is a great option if you want a very glowy finish. It is probably one of the most hydrating, thin, comfortable foundations I have, and it still has pretty good coverage. And what's interesting is even though it is so glowy and so hydrating, it still lasts really well on my oily skin. I always set it with powder, but sometimes products like this or products that have a finish like this can kind of just melt away, but that is not the case with this one. It stays in place really well, even in the summertime. So I think I will go on and get another shade and just repurchase it because I do think it has expired. Actually, another product that I thought I used up, I feel like I featured this in an empties video, so I'm not sure why it's in here, is from Pure Cosmetics. There was like a tiny bit left of this product, but I had it for years. And again, the formula had changed. This formula kind of went the opposite way, and it was just a little bit thicker than it was initially. It's the Pure 4-in-1 Love Your Selfie Foundation. I loved this so much for years and years. It's not quite like my favorite formula anymore. I wouldn't say there's one particular reason for it. It still looks good on the skin, but in general, I just reach for something that feels a little bit lighter on the skin. So it's not something I was reaching for a ton at the very end when I was finishing it up. I was kind of just finishing it up in an attempt to get rid of it completely. So I am going to declutter this. Again, not sure why it's in here. I think there might still be like 1 or 2 uses. Maybe that's why I put it back in, but it is time to be done with that one. I am going to keep the Haus Labs foundation. This is the Triclone Skin Tech foundation. Even though this really isn't my perfect shade, it is 145 Light Cool. I've said on multiple occasions that I feel like I should get a different shade, but I don't know. I do like this formula. I think it is pretty overhyped for what it is. Like some people love this. It is their absolute holy grail foundation. I like it and I enjoy wearing it, but it's never quite become like my #1 go-to. It looks really nice on the skin. I think in general, I do prefer a little bit more of a smoothing formula, which is interesting because in this swatch, it looks really, really smooth. But once I set it into place, I feel like it does tend to enhance texture just a little bit for me. So it is something I like wearing because it does have more of a skin-like finish. Like it looks like skin. It doesn't really look like a heavy foundation on the skin. But again, just not my personal like #1 foundation of all time. But anyway, that's why I haven't purchased a new shade. I just kind of make this one work by mixing in a little bit of like a white mix-in pigment, or yeah, I just usually lighten it up just a little bit. Anyway, that being said, there are days where I like to use it on like very specific occasions, so I am going to keep it. This is a higher end foundation that I just haven't fallen in love with. I think I got it on sale during some sort of Ulta sale. It's the Smashbox Always On Skin Balancing Foundation. First of all, the shade is a little bit off, and that, as you'll notice, is just kind of a theme when it comes to my foundations. I have a hard time finding a shade that matches my skin perfectly, but I can usually overlook that. This is F30N. I'll swatch it for you just for reference. I don't know, like every time I wear this, I feel like it looks really good. It lasts really well, but there's like a certain factor that it's missing. It doesn't look incredibly smooth. It doesn't feel super hydrating. I don't know, like there are other formulas that I just like a little bit better than this. If you have extremely oily skin and you're looking for a lightweight foundation that does last well, I think you'll enjoy this, which honestly sounds like something I personally would love. So I don't know exactly what it is. I think, you know, truthfully, like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I love matte foundations, but I do like something that feels a little bit more hydrating on the skin, even though I have oily skin, because I always go in and set it with powder. So if it is more of a matte foundation in the first place, and then I set it with powder, sometimes my skin can look a little bit too matte. Whereas if it is like a glowy or hydrating foundation and I set it with powder, I feel like that kind of counteracts the powder and it doesn't end up looking too matte, if that makes sense. So anyway, if matte foundations are your thing, I do think you would enjoy this. And like I said, it does last well on the skin. So I'm sure there are some people in my life who would enjoy that formula. It hasn't become one of my go-tos. Another formula that hasn't become one of my go-tos, but one that I am going to hang on to, is the CoverGirl Simply Ageless Skin Perfector Essence. I want to keep this one on hand because I do think as we head into the fall season, I might end up using it a little bit more. So I have the shade, oh, it's right on the front. I have the shade Light. What's interesting is I do think this runs a little bit lighter than you would expect. So I would probably go a shade or two darker if I was purchasing it for the first time. But again, I feel like mixing in a little bit of a bronzer drop would be perfect. I haven't worn this in a little while because when I did my initial review, I told you it just doesn't last on my oily skin. And I think that was back in the spring. So I think once fall rolls around, I am going to break this back out and see if I enjoy it again. It is really nice. Like, it's very light, very natural on the skin. It looks so weird when you pump it out on the back of your hand. That's probably a little bit too much, but I know so many people love this product. Like, it has become their #1 absolute go-to, and it does look very natural. I definitely applied too much. Let me wipe some of that off. It's such a strange, unique formula. Like, it's very watery. It basically feels like a serum, and as you're blending it into the skin, it almost looks a little bit streaky. So I feel like this swatch isn't the best representation of what it actually looks like on the skin, but it ends up looking very natural. It's probably one of the lightest coverage products I own, and see how hydrating it is. Like, it basically has this watery serum texture, which again, it looks great on the skin, but it just doesn't last for me when it's warm out. So I'm going to try it again in the fall and then fully make my mind up. It's something that I want to love, and I do love the way it looks initially. It doesn't last for me. So I feel like that might change in the fall. So this is also from CoverGirl. It's the True Blend Matte Made Foundation. I absolutely love this, especially during the summer, because it is very long lasting, very comfortable. I have the shade L40 Classic Ivory, which is just slightly too dark, but again, it's fine. I usually mix in a little bit of a white pigment. I love the texture of this foundation. It is so incredibly smooth. Like, it just melts into the skin in the most natural way, and it gives your skin like this very smooth look. It is so long wearing, so comfortable. Just one of the best formulas out there. Okay, this is from Tower 28. I actually haven't worn this for a little while, which is strange because it is such a good product for spring and summer. If you're outside a lot and you want to even out your skin tone, but you also want to protect your skin, I love this. It is the Sunny Days Broad Spectrum SPF 30 tinted sunscreen. Usually I still wear sunscreen under this because as I'm getting ready for the day, I just throw on a sunscreen, but sometimes it's nice to have this product because, like I said, it does protect your skin, but I just think the actual formula is really nice. It's very pretty, very comfortable. It is incredibly hydrating. I mean, it has really good coverage for being a tinted sunscreen. Sometimes you try tinted sunscreens and they just have like a slight tint. Like, they don't really do a lot to even out your complexion. That's not the case with this one. I think the reason I don't tend to reach for it a lot during the summer is because it is a very hydrating formula. Like, you can see right here, if I walk outside in the 90-degree weather we've been having, this will probably just melt off my skin. So it is more so something I tend to like in the spring and maybe the fall when I want lighter coverage, but I also want like that good hydrating base. So I'm going to keep this. I have the shade 15 Melrose, which really is like a perfect shade match for me. I think I'm actually going to declutter this product from LYS Beauty. I feel like it's expired, but even beyond that, it's just not a formula that I've reached for a ton over the last year. It is the Triple Fix Serum Foundation. So I have the shade L6. This was one of my favorite products. It's a very lightweight formula, so it's kind of similar to, I mean, a few other products I've mentioned. I feel like I maybe reach for this in place of the LYS. They're not the exact same type of product, but I feel like I get a very similar effect. I just like the typology formula better. Okay, as I'm swatching it, they definitely aren't the same. So I take back what I said. This has a true foundation feel to it. It is very creamy, but it's not overly glowy. Like, once this formula dries down, it looks a little bit more natural on the skin. As I'm swatching it, I'm like, why don't I wear this? Should I try it again? Should I wear it more often? But like I said, it is an older foundation. I've had it for years, and it is the type that ends up separating because it is more of a serum-like texture. Some separation is normal, but I can just tell whenever I break this one bag out and shake it up if I'm reorganizing. It's getting old. So I do feel like maybe it has expired. And again, it's just not something I've worn very much, if at all, over the past year. So to me, that is a sign I need to declutter it. I have other formulas that feel very similar, even though like in the back of my mind, I'm like, don't do it. Wear it, try it out again. I think I'm going to stick with my decision to declutter that. I have a lot of other formulas I'm keeping. This is from ColourPop. I actually just repurchased this fairly recently, like within the last few months. It's the Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Acid Tinted Moisturizer. This is actually something I did declutter that I ended up buying again because I feel like my preferences changed. When I initially decluttered it, I felt like I was leaning more in the direction of like full coverage, long wearing matte foundations. And over the last year, I've definitely embraced something a little bit more natural on the skin for day to day. And I'm so glad I bought this again. Like it is the most beautiful formula. I have the shade Light 5N. Actually, this mixed with bronzing drops is like the perfect summer combo because this is like a true tinted moisturizer, a very, very light coverage product. I feel like it doesn't overpower the bronzing drops and it just gives your skin like this beautiful summertime glow. So again, such a good summertime staple. Like between this and the Typology Tinted Serum, I feel like I really don't need to try like a ton of other skin tints or tinted moisturizers or products that fall into that category. Although this is technically a skin tint as well. It's the Fenty Eavesdrop Blurring Skin Tint. I have the shade 3. They call this a skin tint, but in my mind, I feel like it has a little bit more coverage than a lot of my skin tints or tinted moisturizers. Not a ton of coverage. Like it still looks very natural on the skin. This one leans the most matte out of the 3 that I've been talking about. It is really gorgeous on the skin. If you have oily skin and you're looking to try some type of tinted serum, whatever you want to call it, I feel like everyone's calling them different names these days. This is the way to go because it does last very, very well on oily skin. It holds up in the heat, but it's incredibly lightweight and it just gives like the perfect amount of coverage. It's a little bit more coverage than ColourPop or Typology, which is nice if you want that, but I do think it is such a gorgeous formula. Actually, Catrice launched their version of a tinted serum. And I don't really consider this to be like a true tinted serum. I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of like with lip oils. Everyone's calling everything a lip oil because it's very trendy, but some lip oils feel more like an actual lip gloss. And I feel like that can come into play with products like this. I mean, they call it a tinted serum foundation, which maybe makes a little bit more sense. But in my mind, I use this when I want like a true foundation, maybe something a little bit more comfortable, more medium coverage. So I have 2 different shades. I'll swatch them for you. On the left is 10N and then on the right is 20 Warm. Again, neither one is a great shade match. I usually end up mixing these together. I need to go online and maybe repurchase it in a shade that I love. Typically, I can find one shade in Catrice products that works really well for me. And Catrice makes some of my favorite complexion products. I love like all of their other foundations, which I'll show you in just a second. This is really beautiful. I don't think people are going to love this as much as maybe the other 2, just because of the way it's marketed. I think based on the marketing, you would expect it to be a little bit more of a glowy product, something kind of similar to other moisturizing foundations out there, but it does dry down to be more matte. So again, if you have oily skin, if you have normal or combo skin, and you like a little bit more of a matte finish, but something very light and comfortable with pretty good coverage, I would recommend this one. Don't let the name throw you or convince you to buy it because it really doesn't fall into like that tinted serum category in my opinion. This is another one of my favorites from Catrice. It's their HD Liquid Coverage Foundation. So I have 2 shades. Typically I wear the shade Light Beige, but I also have Fair Beige for some reason. So I'm going to swatch it. I don't know that I've reached for it at all over the last year, but I did keep it for some reason. So let's just double check. So on the left is Fair Beige, on the right is Light Beige. They're not really that different. I think Fair Beige, which is this one, is maybe like slightly warmer. So I am going to stick with Light Beige. The one on the left is the newer updated formula. I think they just improved it a little bit. I'm not completely sure what the differences are off the top of my head, but when I swatch them next to each other, they don't feel a lot different. I do love this. I've loved it for years. It is such a good long wearing full coverage foundation. If you want matte full coverage foundation that doesn't move all day long, this is the formula to wear. I've tested this this out in like incredibly hot weather, very high humidity, and this is the one. Okay, this is from Glossier. It is their Stretch Fluid Foundation in the shade Light 2. I actually haven't worn this in a little while. I do love this. I feel like it just kind of gets lost among the sea of my other foundations. And even though I enjoy it, again, it's not become like my absolute go-to. Okay, as I'm swatching it, now I remember, it's not the lightest feeling foundation. Like once you blend it in and it's on the skin, it doesn't feel heavy, but it almost has a little bit of like a thicker, creamy feel to it. So I loved this, especially during the fall. I was going to say winter, like fall and winter, because it definitely feels moisturizing. And if you're dealing with any sort of dryness, this product is nice because it just kind of smooths over those areas, but it's not overly glowy. Like it looks really natural on the skin. I find that it wears well. It definitely has more of a skin-like finish for me. The color is a really great shade match, which definitely helps when I'm wearing it because I love the way it looks on the skin. So I am going to keep this one, but again, not a summer favorite, which is why I haven't worn it lately. Definitely something that I like more so in the colder weather. This is from Urban Decay. It's their Face Bond Foundation. I have the shade 5 Fair Neutral. It's one of my favorite foundation launches of 2024. It is a full coverage matte foundation, although it can be manipulated to look a little bit lighter. I think they say if you apply it with your fingers, it's like the lightest coverage. With a sponge, it's medium coverage, and then with a brush, it's full coverage. So even though it does look full coverage because of the way that I like to apply foundation, which is with a brush, and I like to stipple it on, you can get something a little bit lighter, which is nice. This is going to be for you if you have oily skin. If you have dry skin, I'm curious to know what you think about this. It definitely has like a true matte finish. And I think during the winter, when I do tend to deal with a little bit of dryness, I can't imagine this would be a formula that I would love to wear because it is super, super matte on the skin, but it's very light. It is so incredibly comfortable. It's probably one of the lightest feeling foundations I have, which is so interesting because it also gives the most coverage if I build it up. I think this is such a nice updated formula. Like a lot of full coverage matte long wearing foundations over like the past 10 years have been so heavy, so cakey on the skin. And this is not like those. It's incredibly lightweight. You can layer it, you can build it up, and it doesn't get to that cakey look or feel. So I do love this. I don't wear it quite as much as I originally thought I would. I think I thought it would become one of my absolute go-tos. But again, my preferences have just changed, and in general, I don't always need such full coverage. But when I do want that, it's always nice to have that one on hand. I have this product from Urban Decay, which I do love, but I think in my mind, I tell myself I love it more than I actually do. It's the Stay Naked Hydromaniac Tinted Glow Hydrator. So I don't always wear this on its own. In fact, most of the time, I kind of mix it in with something a little bit more matte. I almost wonder how this would be mixed with the Face Bond foundation. I have the shade 30 Light. I feel like this is a nice option if you have dry skin because it is incredibly hydrating. It is super, super creamy. Every time I swatch it, every time I wear it, I'm like, no, I love this formula so much. And I do. I don't know why I don't wear it more. Here's what it looks like on the skin. I think it's because I really just have other formulas that are so similar to this. Like that exact finish is so close to so many other ones that I've swatched in today's video. And I don't know, I feel like I should declutter it. It is just such a great product to mix in with other foundations. Because it's summertime, I feel like that's what I'm thinking about when I'm going through all of these foundations, but fall and winter are coming and I don't want to get rid of all of my more moisturizing formulas. So I think I'll hang on to that. Another good moisturizing formula that I absolutely love is from Fenty. Is this it or is it the other one? It's this one, the Soft Lit Naturally Luminous Longwear Foundation. I have the shade 150, and I'll just talk about the other one right now too. This one is the Pro Filter Soft Matte Longwear Foundation, which I also have in 150, but they aren't the exact same shade. Like you can even tell in the bottle. I feel like the one on the left matches me a little bit better. I'll swatch these next to each other. These are very, very different foundations. I feel like in general, if you love one, you probably might not necessarily love the other, but I do like them both. All right, so on the left is the hydrating one, on the right is the matte one. It's so interesting swatching them next to each other, and I keep saying I want to wear them mixed together, but I haven't done that yet. The shades really are so different. I don't know if I've ever swatched them directly next to each other, but I actually went with a darker shade with the hydrating formula because 150 in the matte formula is just a little bit too light for me. And then I ended up going back to 150 and it's so different. It's like a little bit cooler. This one's a little bit not like full on yellow toned. It's too light for me. The shade is just off. Anyway, you can really see the difference in these two foundations. I wonder if the one on the right has expired. I feel like I repurchased it not even a year ago. So I don't know. I think the formula is just a lot heavier. And the one on the left is so lightweight, so creamy, so blendable. And again, I guess my preferences have just changed because I don't know that I would have ever preferred the one on the left to the one on the right in the past, but I do now. Okay, mixed together, I don't know that I would love that because I feel like the matte foundation kind of overtakes the hydrating foundation. Anyway, I do like them both, even though I'm like saying I can't really believe I wear the matte one. It is something I like when I want more of a long wearing finish. But now that I have the Urban Decay one, I'm like, do I need the Fenty one? I do mix the Fenty one with the Fenty Ease Drops, and I feel like that's actually a really good combo because when I want just slightly more coverage, I add in like a touch of this one. I am going to keep both of them, but I almost feel like maybe I should get a darker shade in the matte formula because that really isn't my perfect shade match. A glowy foundation I am going to declutter is the Makeup by Mario one. I didn't hate this as much as a lot of other people did. A lot of people don't like it because it does kind of have like a little bit of shimmer to it. I have the shade 3W. I just don't think this is the best formula, especially now that Fenty came out with their hydrating formula. That one feels so much better. Like this is a little bit thicker. It's super, super creamy. So I feel like it could work for you if you have dry skin or if you have normal skin. It's just, it feels heavy on the skin, especially compared to Fenty and compared to a few other formulas I have. It also kind of has a strange scent. And now that I smell that, I'm like, did it always smell like that or did mine expire? It kind of has like a clay scent to it. Also, this is not a great shade for me. I do end up mixing in like a blue mix-in pigment. It has too many cons. And at this point, I have discovered other moisturizing formulas I like a little bit better that feel lighter on the skin. I am going to declutter the Makeup Revolution IRL Filter Longwear Foundation. Again, this is a formula that I do like, but over the past year, I've found formulas that I like just a little bit better. So it's not something that I've been reaching for a ton lately. I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it. My opinion on it hasn't changed. And again, I think this is one that maybe got slightly mixed reviews. I found it to be really nice because it is a lighter feel on the skin, but again, really good coverage, maybe somewhat similar to, what's going on? Oh, okay, I don't remember it being like this. I've been shaking it up and applying it to the skin and it's coming out super watery. Was it like that before? I don't think it was. I feel like it was a little bit thicker. So maybe this formula has expired too. I think I've probably had this one for 2 years. It's interesting with foundation because some of them last a lot longer than others do. I mean, this isn't what it was like before, right? Anyway, all of that being said, I really did like this foundation. I just feel like it's been replaced by other formulas I like a little bit better. My go-to favorite foundation of all time is the Catrice True Skin. I still love this. I still reach for this one the most out of everything. There are time periods where I'll kind of put it away and focus on other formulas, but when it comes down to it, like nothing has completely topped this one. I do have 2 different shades, so normally I wear the shade Neutral Sand, which is on the right, but during the winter it was just a little bit too dark for me, so I bought Cool Nude, which is the one on the left, and mixing them together was really like the perfect combo. So on the left is Cool Nude, which is 07, and then on the right is Neutral Sand, which is 030. This is just, it's the best. It is so creamy, so long wearing. It's not overly glowy. It's not too matte. It's just like a foundation that you can wear either way. You can wear it a little bit lighter on the skin if you really blend it in. You can layer it up. It doesn't look heavy or cakey. Like it is my #1 foundation. And it's so nice when you have like a #1 favorite in a category that you know just doesn't let you down, because sometimes you don't want to, I don't know, like there are days where I'm not in the mood to like throw something on and not be like completely satisfied with it. So I know that I can always go back to this one. It's just the best. So I do have 2 shades. I'm going to keep them. Like I said, during the winter, I kind of mix them together. And then during the summer, I'll wear Neutral Sand. That's what they look like mixed together just for reference. This is a tough one because they don't sell it in stores. You can buy it on Amazon or from the Catrice website. And I feel like the shade names don't always match up with the way it looks. So it was like a little bit of trial and error for me to find my perfect shades with that one, but once I did, I was really happy because I do love the formula. Okay, this is from About Face. It's the Performer Skin Focused Foundation. This is such a good product. I feel like it is so underrated. And when they first launched it, I felt like it got a lot of hype, a lot of buzz. The shade range is amazing. And honestly, it makes it easy to find which shade would potentially be the one for you because of the way they're labeled. They paid special attention to undertones with this line, so they have I forget all of them off the top of my head. There's like warm undertones, neutral, olive, maybe pink, and then I'm forgetting a few, but I feel like a lot of brands just kind of focus on like warm and cool or yellow and pink, whereas this line has like a better range. It is so lightweight, so comfortable, but it has the most gorgeous skin-like finish to it. It's very, very hydrating. So I think this is a really nice option if you do have dry skin or you do prefer more of a hydrating feel, but it's not too much. Like if you have oily skin, I still think you would like this because it does dry down and it lasts pretty well. I do tend to get more of like a light to medium coverage look with this. You can build it up to some extent, but it's not the type of formula that you usually want to build up because it just gives you like a your skin but better, glowy, I'm super hydrated, I slept for 10 hours type of look. Not trying to overly sell you on this or any foundation, that's not my goal, especially with these videos, but I just feel like that one does not get enough love. Actually, this formula is maybe kind of similar. It's from ColourPop. It's their Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Hydrating Foundation. So on the left, I have Light 45 Warm, and then on the right is Light 55N. I do like having both of these. I feel like the undertone of 55 is a little bit better for me, but the shade of 45 is a little bit better. This was actually one of my go-to foundations for a few years as well. I tried this years ago. Like I want to say it was 2018 maybe even before that. I'm not good with remembering years. Maybe it was like 2020. I don't know exactly when they came out with this, but I've loved it for a long time. I almost feel like this foundation and the tinted moisturizer from the Pretty Fresh line were kind of ahead of their time. And even though they're older products, I feel like they are the type of formulas that people would love so much in 2024. It does feel very similar to the About Face foundation. I just think it's very comfortable on the skin. It has pretty good coverage, and if you want a moisturizing feel to your foundation, but you maybe want a little bit more coverage than a lot of other brands offer, I think this is a nice option. Like I said, I usually do end up mixing the shades together, and I feel like that is a little bit more ideal. But now that I'm swatching this one, I'm like, oh, I miss it. I wish it didn't get like lost in my foundation drawer, which is exactly why I do declutter. And that's why I do my everyday makeup drawer videos to switch things out, because it is easy to forget about older favorites. Obviously, it is fun to, test out new makeup and try different formulas. But the truth is, like, there are so many good formulas out there that have been around for a while that are just as good, but maybe they're not super hyped up any longer. Okay, the last foundation I have in here that I want to talk about is from Flower Beauty. This is the Light Illusion foundation. These just feel so luxe. Like, this is one of the best foundations when it comes to packaging that I have. So on the left, I have Porcelain L1, and then on the right, I have Nude L3. Again, an older launch that I feel like would be really relevant in 2024, but it doesn't get as much buzz. I will say Flower Beauty's shade range is not as good as other brands. Like, it's not as good as ColourPop, definitely not as good as About Face or Fenty, and those are all brands that make really good hydrating foundations. This one's a little bit more glowy than some of the other ones that I shared with you, but I feel like a little bit of this goes a long way. So I did pretty heavy swatches, not heavy. I kind of applied the same amount as I was swatching everything, but this one is a little bit thicker. So I feel like this is maybe best applied with a sponge to kind of sheer it out, because it does look really, really pretty on the skin. Again, do I need both shades? That's the problem. Probably not, but I feel like neither one is like perfect for me, and then mixed together, they're a little bit more ideal. So since I have them, I will keep both, but in the future, I don't know why I never tried the shade 2. Okay, so now that I'm done decluttering, I'm just taking a look. You know what? I am going to declutter the Urban Decay Hydromaniac. Now that I've gone through all of them, I feel like there are other very hydrating formulas I love that I could mix in with more matte finishes, which is why I'm keeping this one in my mind. I'm like, no, I like to use it to mix in, but I could really mix in like any other hydrating formula. So let's declutter this one. And honestly, I just feel like it's still a little bit too full. I think the issue for me is I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different formulas where I have 2 different shades. So that's the tough part, because if I only had one shade, I could remove 6 additional bottles, but it just doesn't always work out like that. I guess it is what it is. I don't want to get rid of a second shade just to get rid of it when mixing it together really is a little bit more ideal. So anyway, this is what my foundations looked like before I decluttered. And then here's a look at them now after I decluttered. These are the ones that I'm getting rid of. So I feel good about that because these are shades that don't work for me or formulas that I don't tend to reach for as much. So thank you guys so much for watching my first declutter video. I really appreciate you being here. Stay tuned because I'll be uploading more declutter videos probably like every 2 weeks. And next I'm going to go through and do, what are these called? Concealers. So I'll see you very soon with my concealer declutter. Bye.